Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthfication Chronicles, and two major reports came out today, but, tomorrow is the hearing. So how in the world are we supposed to read, 400 and some pages in one night? Well, I can't read that fast. So I didn't read, but I did go through like the table of contents at the beginning, because essentially if you read that, I think you got the idea of what the report's about. So the first one was from the Republicans, and it was a report of evidence in the Democrats' impeachment inquiry in the House of Representatives. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this should have been like one page that had 2 words in it. No evidence. That would have been enough for me. But of course, they had to do the full-blown thing and give a real report. So you go down here, you've got it prepared for the staff and everything. On December 2nd is when this was done. So this one actually came out on the 2nd, but I didn't see the Schiff report until today, which is the 3rd, when I'm recording this. So the executive summary gives you a good overview, but there's nothing new in here except it tells just the same stuff. And it gives the documentation down here for the same basic things that we know what the Republicans are already going to say, because they go through and they refute absolutely everything. But of course, that's not good enough. So if we go down here just a little ways, I'm sorry, I'm really scrolling. The findings kind of give you an overview here. Democrats allege that President Trump pressured Ukraine to initiate investigations into his political rival, former Vice President Biden, for the purpose of benefiting the president in the 2020 U.S. presidential election. The evidence does not support the Democrats' allegations. Instead, the findings outlined below are based on the evidence presented and information available in the public realm. President Trump has a deep-seated, genuine, and reasonable skepticism of Ukraine due to its history of pervasive corruption. President Trump has a long-held skepticism of U.S. foreign assistance and believes that Europe should pay its fair share for mutual defense. I mean, this is common sense. This is what we know because this is out there everywhere. Nobody should be surprised that Trump has this skepticism of what's going on with our U.S. dollars. President Trump's concerns about Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board are valid. The Obama State Department noted concerns about Hunter Biden's relationship with Burisma in 2015 and 2016. Yep, see, this is what was said. There is indisputable evidence that senior Ukrainian government officials opposed President Trump's candidacy in the 2016 election and did so publicly. It has been publicly reported that a Democratic National Committee operative worked with Ukrainian officials, including the Ukrainian embassy, to dig up dirt on then-candidate Trump. And that was okay, evidently, because it was digging up dirt on Trump. See, the double standard? Anyway. The evidence does not establish that President Trump pressured Ukraine to investigate Burisma Holdings, Vice President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, or Ukrainian influence in the 2016 election for the purpose of benefiting him in the 2020 election, because the 2020 election was never even mentioned. The evidence does not establish that President Trump held a meeting with President Zelensky for the purpose of pressuring Ukraine to investigate Burisma Holdings, Vice President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, or Ukrainian influence in the 2016 election. The evidence does not support that President Trump withheld U.S. security assistance to Ukraine for the purpose of pressuring Ukraine to investigate Burisma Holdings, Vice President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, or Ukrainian influence in the 2016 election. The evidence does not support that President Trump orchestrated a shadow foreign policy apparatus for the purpose of pressuring Ukraine to investigate Burisma Holdings, Vice President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, or Ukrainian influence in the 2016 election. The evidence does not support that President Trump covered up the substance of his telephone conversation with President Zelensky by restricting access to the call summary. President Trump's assertion of long-standing claims of executive privilege is a legitimate response to an unfair, abusive, and partisan process and does not constitute obstruction of a legitimate impeachment inquiry. And then it gets into the table of contents. And essentially, like I said, if you read the table of contents in both documents, you'll find out that this is the summary of it. And basically, again, we know what the Republicans are going to say. They go point by point and they show why those were their findings. And so their findings are there's no evidence. That's pretty much it. But yeah, they had to write a 123-page long paper to, put that point across. Oh, our government, so streamlined. Anyway, so you can see that it just goes each point and you can see what page it's on. Be aware that these page numbers are not accurate to the PDF because there's a lot of front matter that is in Roman numerals. So you'll have to add on, I forget how many pages there are of this. But, this is kind of how these documents go. And it just keeps going on, but it's really kind of detailed. Again, if you read through this, you'll get the basic overview of what's really happening and what's in this document. So you don't have to read the whole document itself. But they go each one in particular and go through the different people that they were talking about. Yep, all of these. And he's not wrong to raise questions about Hunter Biden's role. And especially it was all about the 2016 election. There was nothing about 2020. And you know what? After Joe and his hairy legs comment, if you haven't seen that, you got to find the hairy legs comment because that is a really, really creepy thing. I retweeted it on Twitter because somebody had posted it, but I also put a disclaimer down below saying, I'm not sure this is valid. I'm not sure if it's real. I haven't been able to find the source. Well, I found the source and it is real. And it's just really creepy. Very, very creepy. So anyway, it goes on and on. Like I said, and then the conclusion down here would be on page 109, which then you have to add, let's see, how many down here? There's 9 extra pages that you have to add to it. So take whatever number that was and add 9. Actually, maybe more than that, because then I forgot you have a table of names. If you don't know who all these players are, here they are. It tells you who they are. By the way, if you have not seen Glenn Beck's videos, the chalkboard videos on the whole Ukraine thing, you really do need to see it because he went through and explained it, and it is quite confusing, and there's a lot to it, but he did a great job of going through everything and pointing out who the people were and what all they were doing. And so, see, all of these people, they're mentioned. So, look at all the people. Yeah. So, some good guys, some bad guys. You got them all right here, and the best guy of all right here. Yay! And he is going to continue being president for another 4 years. So, actually 5 years at this point. But anyway, so it goes on and on. And be aware that there are different spellings of Zelensky, by the way. There's different spellings of some of these names just because they use like the Russian alphabet. So it is different. Anyway, I guess it's the Ukrainian alphabet technically. But I'm not going to go through and read all of them because that's essentially what it does. It goes through, it takes each point and explains it. So there you go. It's a big, long document, but not as long as this one. This one's even longer. And this, I could just rename this instead of the Trump-Ukraine Impeachment Inquiry Report. I think I could rename this Adam Schiff's Fractured Fairy Tales. Now, I don't know if you are old enough to remember Rocky and Bullwinkle, and they always had a little thing called Fractured Fairy Tales. Well, that's what I always think of when I think of Adam Schiff, because that's what he does. He fractures this into a fairy tale and makes it almost unrecognizable. It's crazy what he's done. But it's all down in black and white now, folks. And so now there is no denying what they were doing. These Democrats, I know some of you are frustrated, you want to get rid of them right now, but all along they've been putting all this down out into the public. So when it comes time to show that they were plotting against our president, it's all going to be so obvious because there's so much evidence against them. Oh, anyway, they got all the staff. So you got to give everybody their due credit up front here. And then the different committees. Remember, there were 3 committees in this. It was the Foreign Affairs, and it was the Oversight, and then the Intel Committee. And this one's pretty big, actually. It's Foreign Affairs. Look at this. This Elliot Engel is the guy who runs it. kind of a scrawny guy. Tall, thin kind of guy. Weird looking, in my opinion. Anyway, so as you can see, and always the Democrats have a few more than the Republicans, because that's the way it works when you don't have a majority in the House, which I sure hope is remedied, because I'll tell you what, if it's remedied in 2020, look out, folks, because it's going to be an incredible ride. Anyway, so here's the table of contents. Again, you can do the same thing. You can read through it. You can see what they have to say. See the president's misconduct. And here, he forced out the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Okay, I got that far and I'm like, that's an impossibility. The president can remove any ambassador at any time for any reason. So the president of the United States can never force out an ambassador. Like, he can't. Either he says, yes, you're the ambassador, or no, you're not. There's no force out. That's not realistic. That can only be realistic if the president does not have the authority to fire an ambassador. So that one's out. I thought, okay, well, the first one he puts down there is already wrong. And then it went on, the president put Giuliani and the three amigos. Okay, now, folks, this is kind of a legal document here. It's a historical document. And you're going to use a slur against these people and call them the three amigos right here. This tells it all. I mean, it really does. They have no respect for anyone connected with Trump. None at all. President froze military assistance. Now, we've talked about this before. Y'all know I'm a writer. As a writer, I look at the words they chose. And if you look here so far, forced out, and the three amigos and the froze, these are words that they chose very carefully to get across certain points. And they're hoping people are stupid enough to just accept those words. And unfortunately, it's a tactic that works a lot. It's a method that was developed to write fiction. You use more emotional and words that give better, clearer, brighter pictures. And now newspapers are using the same tactics. Instead of just worrying about giving out facts, they always have to put these more emotionally charged words in there. And so that's what's happening here. Because remember, this document is not talking to all Americans. This document is specifically geared to the Democrat base. In fact, what you've been watching and what you're going to be watching over the next few days or however long this lasts is going to be one of the biggest campaign ads you have ever seen. Okay? That's what this is. This whole impeachment thing is a big campaign ad for the Democrats, and the American people are paying for it. Yep. You and I are paying for the Democrats to have this big campaign ad because this is all they have to run on. They can't run on anything else because Trump is doing so well. He's got the lowest unemployment, and especially in minority groups, and the economy is booming, and all of these things, they can't fight against that. There's no way they can win against it. And so, yeah. And then the president's meeting with the Ukrainian president was conditioned on an announcement of investigations. And he asked the Ukrainian president to interfere in the 2020 U.S. election. No, he didn't. He never did. He asked to look into the Bidens and the 2016 election interference, which were not the same things, by the way. But yeah. So do we not want to look into the 2016 election interference anymore? Do we not? Isn't that what they were all about for the first 2 years? Looking into foreign interference in our election. And now all of a sudden, President Trump wants to look into foreign interference. And it's like, no, you can't do that. No, can't look into foreign interference in our previous elections. That's not allowed. This is Adam Schiff's fractured fairy tale. If you read through it, that's exactly what it is. And then they put the key people and entities at the back and abbreviations and common terms because I guess they think we're stupid and they got to add them back there. So anyway, and then there's this preface. And the preface is Adam Schiff's little job. He has to put in his 2 cents worth. And essentially, this is him telling the American people what to think because he has the truth and he wants them to know the truth. Oh, it really, this will make you sick to your stomach if you read it too much. People wonder why I laugh at these things. It's because if I don't, I really will get angry and sick. And what I've learned over the years is that does you no good. And I know what's going to happen to these people. Okay? So if I didn't know, I would probably be very upset. But I know what's coming. I know what's in the FISA report. I know what Durham is doing. I also know what good old Huber is doing. And folks, don't be misled. Huber is still active. His job was to look into the Clinton stuff. So it's not over yet. And Huber is at work, okay? It's just he's off the radar, man. These guys are so off the radar because nobody's been leaking. And when it all comes out, it's going to be a big surprise, which is good, right? Very good. And so the committees pursued the truth vigorously, but fairly. Fairly. Yeah, ensuring the full participation of both parties throughout the probe. Oh, yeah. Right. See, I told you, this is his fractured fairy tale. It really is. It's not reality. Sustained by the tireless work of more than 36 dedicated staff across the 3 committees. We issued dozens of subpoenas for documents and testimony and took more than 100 hours of deposition testimony from 17 witnesses to provide the American people the opportunity to learn and evaluate the facts themselves. The Intelligence Committee held 7 public hearings with 12 witnesses, including 3 requested by the Republican minority that totaled more than 30 hours. Oh, gee. It's just like, oh, these poor people, tireless work. Oh, we work so hard for the American people. Of course, we haven't done squat on anything else, but hey, we worked hard on this. Well, I bet they worked hard because they know what's coming too. They really do, because they watched Trump dismantle the deep state, and he is taking it apart. And they know it's spiraling in closer and closer and closer to them. They're not going to get away with stuff. They're not. Nobody escapes this. They will all be held accountable. Yep, justice is coming, folks. It really is. And then he has to do a little eulogy here to Elijah Cummings. And anyway, and he wants to thank the dedicated professional staff who worked ceaselessly and with remarkable poise and ability. I mean, it's just like, yeah, really. Oh, and then he starts getting into his, in his farewell address, President George Washington warned of a moment when, quote, cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which have lifted them to unjust dominion. Hello? Are you paying attention, Schiff? Have you looked in a mirror lately? Yeah. But then again, remember, whatever they accuse us of doing, they are already doing. Okay? So anytime he does stuff like this, we already know that he's guilty of it. The framers of the Constitution well understood that an individual could one day occupy the office of the president who would place his personal or political interests above those of the nation. Having just won hard-fought independence from a king with unbridled authority, they were attuned to the dangers of an executive who lacked fealty to the law and the Constitution. Ugh. President Trump has really respected the Constitution, whereas Obama, shredded it. Okay? Remember DACA. DACA, he knew was not legal. He signed it anyway. And he implemented it as law, even though it wasn't. So, yeah, talk about shredding the Constitution. It was not Trump. Trump has defended the Constitution. And he's been very faithful to it. And then he goes through, he does all this, yeah. Okay, so basically he's trying to say all of these things give us the right to impeach Trump. And this is probably what we're going to see on Wednesday. I don't know when I'll get this out. It'll probably come out, Wednesday morning. But if you haven't seen my video from Tuesday, you might want to see Tuesday evening's video, because that gives you kind of a basis for everything that's going to go on Wednesday. So anyway, as this report details, the impeachment inquiry has found that President Trump, personally and acting through agents within and outside the U.S. government, solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, to benefit his reelection. Just an outright lie. Just an outright lie. That's all this is. And when you read it, it's 300 pages of outright lies. It really is. And there's nothing in here. I mean, they continue to promote the Russia collusion lie, even though it's not true. And, it goes on and talks about the call and makes it out to be something that it's not. Yeah. So this is just a pack of hooey. I'm not going to waste any more of your time or my time on that. As always, the links will be down below on these. I want to show you this one last one, because the Republicans, and this is in the Committee on Oversight and Reform, which used to be Elijah Cummings' committee and now is Carolyn Maloney's. And they sent her this letter and reminded her on April 10th of 2019, we wrote to then Chairman Elijah Cummings, asking him to convene a hearing with Inspector General Michael Horowitz following the conclusion of the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General examination of compliance with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. So essentially what they're saying is, hey, we asked for this back then. We want to know, are you going to call in Horowitz so we can ask him questions about the FISA report? I know for sure that Lindsey Graham has called him in for the 11th, but I don't know if they're going to call him in too. They should. I mean, logically they should, because that's what the committee is supposed to do. But will they? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen when this all hits the fan, because this FISA abuse, I think, is going to be pretty huge. And here's something that I believe is going to be in it, and I can't say 100% for sure, but I was watching Rush Limbaugh the other day, and he was focusing on the Carter Page FISA warrant and that abuse. But I think it's going to be a lot bigger than that. I don't think this FISA abuse report is going to be focused solely on Carter Page and that warrant, even though they got that warrant, like they had it renewed like 3 times afterwards. I don't think that's where the major part of the abuse is going to happen, because I really believe there was one on Flynn. I'm almost positive there was one on Flynn. And I'm pretty sure there was one on Manafort and one on Papadopoulos. And I think there was one on Ted Cruz. So I think there were lots of these FISA warrants out there, and they were being used to gather dirt on the Democrats' opponents. So, they needed to have control again just in case Hillary lost, because I think probably they knew the polls were rigged, and the people who were conducting the polls were letting them know that, hey, this is not as solid as we thought it was. So the plan B was starting to be enacted even then. And a lot of stuff is going to come out, but again, Horowitz only deals with procedures and people within the government who are working there. So this report is only going to deal with the, procedure. Did they follow the proper procedures? Did they follow the rules of the Department of Justice? That's what it's really going to focus on. Yes, he can make criminal referrals, but he can't actually indict or impanel grand juries. That's what Durham and Huber and the other U.S. attorneys can do. So when it comes down to it, what's going to happen? There will be indictments that will come out of that FISA report. Okay, there will be criminal referrals, and I'm sure that those will not be declined this time like they've been in the past. These are actually going to go through, and they will be prosecuted. So there will be some people there that are going to be in deep due. Ignore what you've been hearing in the media, because that's simply not true. They're trying to throw you off. They're trying to keep it from coming out as bad as it's going to be. So that's this letter right here. They're just asking that, are you going to bring him in and are you going to interview him? But be aware that I don't think this FISA abuse is going to be just about the Carter Page FISA. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but because they've been talking about it being so big, they said it was like telephone book size, which for those youngsters might not know, it was a fairly thick book and maybe about 4 inches thick or 5-6 inches, depending on where you lived. So yeah, I think it's going to be quite a bit. And I think the reason is because there was more than one FISA. I'm like 99.9% sure there was more than one FISA, especially on Flynn, because of the questioning that Clapper and Sally Yates went through and the responses they gave to in 2017. So I'm really, just like I said, 99.9% positive that Flynn had something on him too. So lots of FISA abuse, and I think that's why the report's going to be so big. So remember that Horowitz is not digging into the predicate of it. He's not digging into what started that whole thing. He's just looking to see if they use the FISA process correctly. And at that point, I think there's where we're going to see some involvement by Chief Justice John Roberts. So that's where, if you watch that video, that's where I think that's going to come in. And we're going to have him then become a fact witness. So he will not be able to preside over the Senate trial. If there is a Senate trial, I don't know if the Senate can just say, no, we don't see enough evidence to make this a trial. But I almost think that they might do it just because there's no other way to get all this information out. Because we've seen, if you watch my other videos, you know that Nadler is setting up the same basic thing as Schiff. And it's, yes, sure, you guys can have witnesses as long as we think they're okay. And if we don't think they're okay, then no, you can't have them. So it's not going to be a very fair process. We know that. So anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.